Karen Whitmore stood in my courtroom wearing a bright blue suit and a charity pin on her jacket. She smiled at the cameras. She smiled at the people sitting behind her. Most importantly, she smiled at the elderly woman across the aisle who had spent her entire savings believing Karen was helping others. Judge, Karen said confidently, "This is nothing more than a misunderstanding from someone who does not understand how charitable organizations work." The woman across from her, Margaret Lewis, lowered her eyes. She was 74 years old. She had donated nearly $18,000 to Karen's charity over 2 years, money she saved after her husband passed away. Money she believed would provide meals for struggling families, medical assistance for children, and emergency support for people who had nowhere else to turn. But the charity never helped those people. It helped Karen. Karen thought the fake certificates, emotional speeches, and stage donation events were enough to fool everyone. She was wrong, because before Karen ever entered my courtroom, I already knew something she did not. The charity's biggest supporter had become its biggest witness, and the one document Karen believed proved her innocence was the exact thing that exposed her. Before I take you deeper into this case, make sure you are subscribed for more powerful courtroom stories like this. Comment below with where you are watching from, because this case proves that kindness should never be used as a weapon. Stay with me, because Karen's fake charity looked perfect from the outside, but one hidden detail destroyed everything. The case began as a civil lawsuit. Margaret Lewis was suing Karen Whitmore for fraud, financial exploitation, and emotional damages. Karen called it an attack on her reputation. She claimed Margaret was an angry former donor who regretted her generosity and wanted her money back. That was Karen's first mistake. She assumed the case was about money. It was not. It was about trust. For almost 3 years, Karen operated an organization called Hands of Hope Community Foundation. The name appeared on banners, social media posts, donation cards, and fundraising events. Karen's photographs showed her handing meals to families, visiting hospitals, and standing beside volunteers. She looked exactly like the person people wanted to believe in. She wore compassion like a uniform. But compassion can be performed. The question is whether it survives evidence. Margaret first met Karen at a community center. At the time, Margaret was grieving her husband, Robert, who had died after 46 years of marriage. Karen approached her after a charity presentation. She spoke about helping elderly people who could not afford medication. She talked about families choosing between groceries and medical bills. She told Margaret, "Every dollar goes towards someone who needs a second chance." Those words stayed with Margaret, so she donated first $500, then $1,000, then larger amounts. Karen always thanked her personally. She sent photos, she sent updates, she sent handwritten notes saying Margaret's generosity had changed lives. But after 2 years, Margaret noticed something. The families in the photos never appeared again. The medical programs never had public records. The community events always seemed to feature the same people. And when Margaret asked for financial reports, Karen became defensive. I asked Karen when Margaret first requested documentation. She was demanding private information. Private information about donations? Yes. Why would a donor not be allowed to know how money is used? She trusted me when she gave it. That answer revealed more than Karen intended. Trust is not permission to avoid accountability. I asked whether Hands of Hope was registered as a nonprofit. Yes. Did you file annual financial reports? Yes. Were those reports accurate? Yes. 3 confident answers. Karen had prepared for these questions, but prepared answers are not always truthful answers. I displayed the first document, the charity registration, then the second, the tax filings. then the third. The bank statements, Karen's expression changed, only slightly, but enough. The charity had received $412,000 in donations over 3 years. The reported expenses claimed nearly all of it went toward community programs. But the bank records showed something different. Large payments went to companies owned by Karen: marketing fees, consulting fees, event management, office rentals, all under names designed to look professional. I asked Karen whether she owned Bright Future Consulting. Yes. Did Hands of Hope pay Bright Future Consulting? Yes. How much? She looked toward her attorney. Several payments. The records showed $96,000. I asked what services Bright Future Consulting provided. Administrative support. Can you explain what that means? It managed operations. Did it have employees? Did it have an office? No. Did it provide services to any other organization? No. So the charity paid a company that existed only to receive charity money. Corin called that normal. I called it something else. A pattern. But one payment caught my attention, a $14,500 charge listed as Community Family Assistance Event. I asked Karen about it. That was our largest outreach event. Where was it held? At a local park. How many families attended? Over 100. Who organized it? Our volunteers. Where are the attendance records? She paused. Our system changed. A missing record, a missing list, a missing explanation. Those things often appear together. Then I asked about the photos from the event. Corin smiled. That proves our work. I nodded. Actually, it proves something else. The photos showed smiling families receiving boxes of food, but the metadata revealed the images were taken at a promotional event organized by a different charity 2 years earlier. Karen had downloaded them and used them as her own. The courtroom became silent. Karen stopped smiling. Her entire public image depended on people never looking closely. But the problem with fake kindness is that it requires many small lies, and small lies leave patterns. I asked Karen if she had ever used another organization's photographs. No, never, no. Not even those. She looked at the screen. Her attorney whispered something. Karen remained silent. Then she said, I may have made a mistake. A mistake is accidental. Using someone else's success to collect money is a choice. I turned toward Margaret. She held a folder against her chest. Inside were every thank you letter Karen sent her, every donation receipt, every promise. But there was one final item Margaret had saved, a handwritten note Karen sent after the largest donation. The note said, because of you, 10 children received life-changing medical support. The problem? There were no 10 children, there was no medical program, and Margaret had saved the bank statement proving exactly where that money went. Straight into Karen's personal account. Karen had fooled donors. She had fooled volunteers. She had fooled people who wanted to believe kindness still existed. But she forgot one thing. Paper remembers. And Margaret brought every page. Karen Whitmore had built her entire reputation on one idea, that she was the person who helped when nobody else did. Her social media was filled with emotional stories. A family receiving groceries, an elderly man holding a medication box, a child smiling beside a hospital bed. Every picture had the same message. Karen was making a difference. But the bank records told a different story. The money was moving, just not where donors believed it was going. I asked Margaret how she first discovered something was wrong. She explained that she never suspected Karen at the beginning. That was important. Fraud often survives because victims want to believe the person they trusted. Margaret did not want Karen to be guilty. She wanted an explanation. After Robert died, Margaret struggled with loneliness. She attended community events because she wanted to feel useful again. Karen noticed that. She noticed who was grieving. who had money saved, who wanted to leave something meaningful behind. That was how she operated. She did not search for people who were careless. She searched for people who wanted to help. I asked Margaret what changed her mind. She pulled out a small envelope. Inside were 3 letters from families Karen claimed to have helped. The letters were supposed to be thank you messages. But the families did not exist. The addresses belonged to empty buildings. The phone numbers were disconnected. The names belonged to people who could not be verified. Karen's attorney argued that small charities often lacked perfect records. That was true. Not every missing document proves wrongdoing, but this was not one missing document. It was a pattern. Fake families, fake photos, fake programs, and real money. I asked Karen about the families. Did you personally meet these people? Yes. Can you provide their names? Yes. Where are they now? They moved. All of them? Yes. Within the same year? Karen looked uncomfortable. Yes. Coincidences happen, but when every answer protects the same person, coincidence becomes harder to accept. I displayed the charity's event records. Karen claimed she held monthly food distributions. The records showed the same volunteer names appearing at every event. I asked whether those volunteers were paid. No. I asked whether they were friends or family. She hesitated. Some. How many? She did not answer. The volunteer list contained Karen's sister, cousin, former assistant, and 2 employees from her personal business. The charity looked independent, but behind the scenes, it was controlled by the same small group of people. I asked about the donation boxes used at events. Karen claimed they were collected and counted by volunteers. Then I displayed security footage from a community center. The video showed Karen removing the donation box alone after an event. She carried it into her car. No volunteer, no witness, no record. Karen said she was transporting it for safety. That was possible. But the footage showed something else. The next morning, the charity's deposit was $2,400 lower than the estimated donations recorded by volunteers. Karen blamed counting errors, agon, a mistake, a missing record, a misunderstanding. Every explanation had the same ending. Karen was never responsible. I asked whether she had ever used charity funds for personal expenses. No, never, never. I displayed a credit card statement. The card belonged to Hands of Hope. The purchases included a luxury hotel, store clothing, fine dining, a private vacation package. Karen looked at the statement. These were business related. How? The hotel was for networking. The vacation, a leadership retreat, the designer clothing, professional appearance. I looked at her. The donors paid for your appearance. Her attorney objected, but the question had already landed. Karen wanted people to believe every personal benefit had a charitable purpose. That was the danger. A person can hide selfishness behind enough good words. I asked her about the largest transaction, a $38,000 payment to a company called Sterling Media Solutions. Karen said it was for documentary production. What documentary? A film about our charity work. Where is the film? It was never completed. Why? Technical issues. I displayed the company registration. Sterling Media Solutions was owned by Karen Whitmore. The charity paid Karen's company $38,000. The film was never created. No employees, no equipment rentals, no production records, just money leaving the charity account. Margaret looked down. She was not angry. She looked hurt, because every new document proved that the person she admired had never been who she claimed. I asked Karen why she created a charity. She answered immediately, to help people. The answer sounded perfect, too perfect, so I asked another question. How much did you personally receive from Hands of Hope? Her attorney objected. I overruled Karen was the founder, the public face, The person asking others for trust, she answered. I receive compensation. How much reasonable compensation? The records showed $178,000 over 3 years, not illegal by itself. A nonprofit leader can receive payment. The issue was transparency. Donors believed their money was helping families. They did not know it was funding Karen's lifestyle. I asked whether donors were told about the payments. Yes. Where? In our records. Were those records available to donors upon request? Did Margaret request them? Yes. Did you provide them? Karen went silent because the answer was no. She had accepted donations based on emotion, then hidden the details behind paperwork. I looked at Margaret's folder. She had saved everything, every receipt, every message, every promise. Karen thought emotional people would forget. She was wrong. Margaret remembered because every donation represented a decision. She had chosen to trust, and she wanted to know who had received that trust. Then the clerk brought forward the final evidence packet. Inside was a USB drive recovered from Karen's office. Karen's attorney immediately objected. He argued it was private business material, but the file had already been authenticated. The USB contained internal charity planning documents, budgets, donor lists, and one spreadsheet. The title was simple: People Who Give Easily. Karen's donor strategy was not about helping communities. It was about identifying vulnerable supporters. And Margaret's name was at the top with one note beside it. High emotional value, increased contribution after husband's death. The courtroom became silent. Karen stopped pretending. Because the fake charity was never just about money. It was about finding people who trusted her enough to hand it over. The spreadsheet was the first moment Karen Whitmore stopped looking like a charity founder, because the words on that screen did not describe donors. They described targets. High emotional value. Increased contribution after husband's death. Responds strongly to personal stories. Those were not notes about helping people. They were instructions for extracting more money from people who trusted her. Margaret looked at the spreadsheet for a long time. Then she quietly closed her folder. That reaction told me more than anger would have. She was not surprised by losing money. She was hurt by realizing the person who accepted her kindness had studied her sadness as an opportunity. I asked Karen whether she created the spreadsheet. No. Was it found on your office computer? Yes. Was the computer used only by you? Yes. Did anyone else have access? My assistant. Who created the donor categories? I don't know. Again, the same pattern. When the evidence was connected to her, responsibility moved somewhere else. I displayed the file history. The spreadsheet was created under Karen's account, edited by Karen's account, and emailed from Karen's account to her assistant. The message attached said, "Prioritize the widows and retired donors. They are the most committed." The courtroom became silent. Karen's attorney leaned forward. Context matters. I agreed. It did. So I asked for the context. What context explains targeting people after personal loss? Karen answered, "We were identifying donors who cared deeply. Why specifically widows? Because they often wanted to continue their spouse's legacy." That answer sounded reasonable for a moment. Then I asked, "Did your charity provide a program specifically for widows?" No. Did the donations from those widows fund such a program? No. Then why track them separately? Karen had no answer, because the spreadsheet was not about compassion, it was about strategy. I turned toward Margaret. She explained that after her husband died, Karen repeatedly contacted her. At first, the messages were comforting. "How are you holding up? Robert would be proud of your kindness." Then they changed. A little more pressure, a little more urgency, a little more guilt. "We have a family waiting. We need help by Friday. Only people like you can make this possible." Karen knew exactly which words would open Margaret's heart. That was why the spreadsheet existed. She was not guessing. She was measuring. I asked Karen whether she had ever told donors their contributions were urgent when they were not. No. Margaret opened her folder. Inside were emails from Karen. One read, "We have a child's surgery payment due tomorrow. Your help could save a life." I asked Karen for the child's name. She could not provide one. I asked for hospital records. None existed. I asked where the money went. The payment was made to Sterling Media Solutions, Karen's own company, the same company that received $38,000 for a documentary that never existed. The fake emergency and the fake documentary were connected. The money always returned to Karen. I asked why she created emotional emergencies. She said, because donors respond to urgency. The answer came naturally, too naturally. She did not say people, she said donors. That difference mattered. People are individuals. Donors are numbers. Karen had stopped seeing the people behind the money. I asked about the charity events, the photos, the families, the hospital visits. Karen claimed they were all legitimate. Then I displayed the volunteer testimony. Several former volunteers had submitted statements. One volunteer explained that Karen asked them to pose as family members during promotional photographs. Another said some food boxes shown online were empty display boxes used only for pictures. A third said Karen often canceled actual distributions after taking photographs. Karen called them disgruntled former volunteers. That is a common defense. When people reveal uncomfortable truths, attack their motives. But one former volunteer was different. Her name was Lisa Grant. She had been Karen's assistant for 18 months. Lisa was the person who created the donor spreadsheet. She was also the person who saved copies of Karen's instructions. I asked Lisa to approach. Karen looked surprised. She had not expected her assistant to testify. People who build systems around control often forget that systems require people. And people remember. Lisa explained that Karen trained her to identify donors who were emotionally vulnerable. She was told to focus on recent widows, retired couples, and people who had experienced medical loss. I asked why. Lisa looked at Karen. Because Karen said those people were easier to motivate. The room became uncomfortable. Karen shook her head. That is not what I meant. I asked Lisa what Karen meant. She said people who had lost someone wanted to feel like they were still doing something meaningful. Margaret lowered her eyes. That was exactly how Karen approached her. She did not sell a charity. She sold purpose. Then she converted that purpose into profit. I asked Lisa whether Karen ever discussed helping families. Yes. Did she discuss helping herself? Lisa hesitated. Then she answered, yes. How? She said a charity founder should live comfortably because they are the reason people donate. I displayed a message from Karen to Lisa. Do not let donors see the real expenses. They care about stories, not spreadsheets. Karen stared at the screen. Her entire defense had depended on one idea, that nobody would look closely. But Margaret looked. Lisa looked. The records looked. And now the court looked. I asked Karen whether she believed donors deserved complete financial transparency. Yes. Did you provide it? Yes. Did Margaret receive it when she asked? No answer. The silence was enough. Then I asked about the final donation, the largest one, $25,000 from Margaret. Karen had personally visited Margaret's home to collect it. The reason? A fictional emergency housing program. Margaret signed the check because Karen showed her a printed letter from a family supposedly facing eviction. The letter was fake. But there was one detail Karen missed. The signature on the letter belonged to someone who did not exist, and the handwriting matched Karen's own donation notes. The fake emergency housing letter was the moment Karen Whitmore's entire story began to collapse. Until then, she had tried to separate every problem, the missing financial reports, the fake photographs, the personal expenses, the donor spreadsheet, the false medical stories. She wanted the court to see each issue as a small mistake, a misunderstanding, an administrative problem. But the letter connected everything because it showed the one thing Karen could no longer explain onset. I asked Margaret where she received the letter. At my home, she said. Who delivered it? Karen. Did she discuss the family mentioned in the letter? Yes. What did she say? She said they would lose their home if I did not help immediately. Karen's attorney argued that urgency was common in charity fundraising. That was true, but urgency requires a real need. A fake emergency is not fundraising. It is manipulation. I asked Karen whether she wrote the letter. No. Did you create the document? No. Did you know the family mentioned in it? Yes. Who are they? She paused. A family we assisted. Names? Silence. Address? Silence. Records? Silence. The courtroom already knew the answer. The family did not exist. I displayed the handwriting comparison. The supposed family letter matched Karen's personal notes from the donor spreadsheet. Same slant, same spacing, same unusual way of writing the number 7. The expert explained that while handwriting comparison alone is not absolute proof, it strongly indicated the same writer. Again, it was not one piece, it was a pattern. Karen's fake charity did not fail because of one mistake. It failed because every lie needed another lie to support it. I asked Karen why she visited Margaret personally for that donation. She said, because Margaret trusted me. That answer was honest and damaging. She did not say because the family needed help. She said because Margaret trusted her. Trust was the resource Karen was collecting. I asked Margaret what happened after she gave the $25,000. She said Karen stopped responding, the updates stopped, the photos stopped, the thank you messages became automatic. Then Margaret discovered another donor had received the exact same emergency letter, different name, same story, same family, same handwriting. Karen had reused the tragedy. I asked Lisa Grant whether she knew about the letters. Yes. Why? Because Karen asked me to print them. How many? More than 20. Were they about real emergencies? No. Lisa looked down. They were templates. The word changed the atmosphere. Templates Karen had not reacted to individual suffering. She had created emotional scripts. I displayed the folder recovered from Lisa's computer. Inside were different versions: medical emergency, housing crisis, school expenses, funeral assistance, each designed for a different type of donor, each designed to create urgency. I asked Karen whether she created these templates. No. Who did? I don't know. Your assistant? Yes. Under your instructions? No. I displayed a message from Karen. Make the widow version stronger. Mention the spouse. That gets a better response. Karen became quiet. Margaret looked away. That message was more painful than the financial records because it showed Karen understood exactly what she was using, not generosity grief. I asked Karen if she believed Margaret was emotionally vulnerable after losing her husband. No. Then why mention her husband in donor notes? No answer. The courtroom remained silent. Sometimes silence is not an absence of response. Sometimes it is the response. I asked about the charity events. Karen had repeatedly claimed thousands of people benefited. So I asked for one beneficiary, just one, a person who's received assistance. Karen named a woman. I asked for contact information. Her attorney said they needed time. I asked for another. Again, no answer. Then I displayed the charity's public claims. Over 3 years, Karen claimed 620 meals provided, 48 medical assistance cases completed, 31 families supported towards 17 emergency housing situation solved. The actual records showed food purchases, minimal medical payments, none. Housing payments, none. The numbers existed only in promotional material. The charity had not helped hundreds of people. It had created the appearance of helping hundreds of people. Karen finally became emotional. I did good things too. I looked at her. Some people do good things and make mistakes. I paused. But this case is not about mistakes. It was not. A mistake does not require fake families. A mistake does not require hidden expenses. A mistake does not require donor manipulation. A mistake does not require telling grieving people that imaginary strangers need saving. Karen had confused performing kindness with practicing it. Then I asked about the charity's biggest event, the one shown in all her advertisements. The event where Karen claimed to have helped over 200 families. She smiled slightly. That was our proudest achievement. I asked where it happened. At the community center. Who organized it? Our volunteers. Who paid for it? The charity. I displayed the rental agreement. The community centers was rented by another organization, not Hands of Hope. The photos Karen used came from someone else's event, but there was one image Karen did not know existed, a behind-the-scenes photograph taken before the event began. It showed Karen standing beside empty donation boxes. A volunteer asked, "Are we filling these before people arrive?" Karen replied, "No. They only need to look full for the pictures." The courtroom went silent because that sentence revealed everything. The charity was not built around helping people. It was built around convincing people that help was happening. I looked at Karen. The woman who once said Margaret did not understand charities was now trapped by the very records she created. But one final piece remained. The piece that would explain why Karen believed she could continue forever. A private message she sent to her assistant after Margaret requested financial records. The message contained only 6 words. She will never check the paperwork. Karen was wrong. Margaret checked. And now everyone was checking. The message was only 6 words. She will never check the paperwork. Karen Whitmore had sent it after Margaret asked for financial records. Those 6 words revealed something more important than any single transaction. Karen did not believe Margaret was wrong. She believed Margaret was unlikely to look. That difference mattered, because fraud often survives on one assumption that nobody will ask questions. Margaret asked. And when she did, Karen's entire system began falling apart. I asked Karen why she wrote that message. I was frustrated. With Margaret? Yes, because she wanted to know where her money went. Karen looked away. That was the real issue. She did not expect accountability from the people who trusted her. She expected silence. I displayed the final financial report submitted by Hands of Hope. The report claimed that 89% of donations went directly to programs, a number designed to build confidence, a number donors wanted to see. But the bank records showed something different. When accounting experts separated real program expenses from personal and internal transfers, less than 12% of donations reached actual assistance. The remaining money moved through companies connected to Karen, consulting, marketing, events, training, all professional words, all hiding the same result. Money leaving the charity and returning to Karen. I asked whether Karen considered herself successful. Yes. Why? Because people believed in my mission. I nodded. That is exactly why they were harmed. A charity does not exist because people believe the founder. It exists because the founder respects that belief. Karen had used trust as a source of income. I asked Lisa Grant about the donor spreadsheet one more time. She explained that Karen reviewed donor profiles every month. She highlighted certain names: recent widows, retired homeowners, people who had inherited money, the people who had lost someone. I asked why those categories mattered. Lisa answered. Karen said people with emotional reasons to give were less likely to question where the money went. Margaret looked down. That sentence hurt more than the missing money, because she understood she was never treated as a supporter. She was treated as a category. I asked Karen if she agreed with that statement. No. Did you create donor profiles? Yes. Did you track personal details? Yes. Did you write notes about their emotional situations? No. I displayed her own spreadsheet beside Margaret's name, husband deceased. Wants to continue his legacy. Responds to personal visits. High potential increase. Karen stared at the screen. The room did not need an explanation. The document explained itself. I asked Margaret what she wanted from the case. Many people assume victims in financial cases only want repayment, but Margaret's answer was different. I want people to know they were not foolish for trusting. That sentence changed the entire room, because Karen's defense depended on making donors feel embarrassed. She wanted them to think. You should have known better. Margaret refused that idea. Trusting someone is not the same as deserving to be deceived. I ruled in Margaret's favor. Karen was responsible for the false statements, fraudulent fundraising practices, misuse of charity funds, and financial harm caused by her actions. I awarded Margaret the full amount supported by the evidence, including her donations connected to the false representations and additional damages allowed in the civil claim. But the financial award was not the largest consequence. I ordered preservation of all charity records, donor files, communications, and financial accounts. The evidence would be forwarded for further review. Karen's attorney immediately stood. My client has helped thousands of people. I looked at him. That claim was made by your client. This courtroom required proof. He sat down. Claims are easy. Evidence is harder. And evidence had arrived. I ordered Karen to stop using the Hands of Hope name, donor materials, photographs, and any representations suggesting programs that could not be verified. The charity that existed publicly would no longer exist in the form Karen created. Karen looked stunned, not because she lost money, because she lost the story. For years, she had introduced herself as the person who helped others. Now people would ask a different question: who did she actually help? After the hearing, Margaret received messages from other donors. Some had given small amounts. Some had given much more. They shared similar stories, emotional appeals, urgent requests, missing updates, no financial records. Karen's pattern had not been discovered because one person was suspicious. It was discovered because one person decided to look. That was the difference. The fake charity depended on people feeling grateful instead of curious. Margaret became curious, and curiosity exposed everything. Months later, I received a letter from Margaret. She wrote that she had started volunteering at a local food bank, not because Karen's story discouraged her from helping, because it reminded her why real help mattered. She wrote, I almost stopped believing people could do good. Then I realized one dishonest person should not take away the kindness that honest people still need. That was the true ending of the case. Karen wanted people to believe generosity required her. Margaret learned generosity belonged to everyone. The difference was accountability. Karen entered my courtroom with a charity pin on her jacket. She wanted everyone to see the symbol before they examined the facts. But symbols can be copied, certificates can be printed, photos can be staged. The truth requires something else: proof. Karen fooled donors. She fooled volunteers. She fooled people who wanted to believe her, but she could not fool the paperwork. She could not fool the bank records. She could not fool the witness who saved every message, and she could not fool a courtroom that was willing to look, because the biggest mistake Karen Whitmore made was not creating a fake charity. It was believing nobody would ever ask where the money went. If this case reminded you that kindness deserves protection, like this video, subscribe for more courtroom stories where manipulation finally meets accountability. Share this story with someone who believes generosity should always come with honesty. Then comment below. At what moment did you realize Karen's charity was built on a lie? Because Karen thought her image would protect her, but in the end, the records told the story she tried to hide. Karen Whitmore believed the end of the case would be about money. She thought people would argue over numbers, donations, expenses, payments. She thought if she could explain enough transactions, enough mistakes, and enough paperwork, she could make the truth feel complicated, but the truth was never complicated. The people who donated wanted to help someone. Karen wanted them to believe she was the person who made that help possible. That difference changed everything. After the ruling, the full investigation into Hands of Hope revealed even more details about how the charity operated. Former volunteers came forward. Former employees provided records. Donors submitted messages they had saved. The same pattern appeared again and again, a heartbreaking story, a personal request, a promise that someone needed help immediately. Then silence after the donation was received. Karen had built a system where emotions opened wallets faster than questions could close them. But eventually, someone asked the question she feared most. Where did the money actually go? The answer was found in the records, not the speeches, not the photographs, not the charity events, the records. Several accounts connected to Hands of Hope were reviewed. Investigators found that Karen had created layers between the charity and her personal spending. She did not simply take money directly. She created companies. She created services. She created explanations. That was why the charity looked legitimate from the outside. The paperwork existed. The names sounded professional. The documents looked official, but the purpose behind them was different. A real organization uses structure to protect its mission. Karen used structure to hide hers. The most damaging discovery came from a folder on Karen's computer. It contained drafts of future fundraising campaigns, not plans for new programs, plans for new emotional stories. One file was titled Holiday Family Emergency, another Medical Crisis Appeal, another Senior Sport Can Side. Each file were notes about which type of donor would respond best. Karen had not been preparing to help people. She had been preparing to persuade people. The person who discovered the folders was Lisa Grant, the assistant who once believed Karen was doing important work. Lisa later admitted that she ignored small warning signs because she wanted to believe in the mission. That was important because most people who are deceived are not careless. They are hopeful. Lisa said the moment she realized the truth was when Karen asked her to remove donor complaints from the system. I asked Lisa why she kept copies of the records. She answered, because I knew one day someone would need to prove what happened. That sentence represented every honest person who decides not to look away. Lisa was not powerful. She was not wealthy. She was not famous. And evidence gives ordinary people a voice. Margaret eventually created a small community fund in her husband Robert's name. But she did something Karen never did. She published every financial record, every donation, every expense, every program. She wanted people to see exactly where the money went. Transparency became the foundation of the organization, the very thing Karen avoided. When asked why she continued helping after being deceived, Margaret gave a simple answer. Because Karen's dishonesty does not belong to the people who need help. That was the lesson she carried forward. One person's greed should not destroy another person's kindness. Months later, Karen gave one final public statement. She claimed she was misunderstood. She said the media exaggerated the situation. She said her intentions were always positive, but intentions cannot erase actions. A person can intend to help and still cause harm. A person can say they care and still exploit trust. The difference is accountability. And accountability begins when someone stops defending the image and starts facing the truth. Karen's biggest mistake was not that she created a charity. It was that she believed the appearance of kindness was the same as kindness itself. She believed a charity logo could replace transparency. She believed emotional stories could replace evidence. She believed people would always remember the good image before checking the facts. But facts have patience. They wait, they remain, and eventually they speak. I still remember Karen's first words in the courtroom. "This is just a misunderstanding." That sentence was common. People often call something a misunderstanding when the truth becomes uncomfortable. But a misunderstanding does not require fake families. A misunderstanding does not require hidden accounts. A misunderstanding does not require a spreadsheet ranking grieving donors by emotional value. Those were choices. And choices have consequences. Karen entered the courtroom with a charity pin and a perfect public image. She left with something very different. A record showing what happened when trust was treated like a business strategy. Margaret entered believing she had lost her ability to help. She left knowing something more important. Her kindness was never the problem. The problem was the person who abused it. And Lisa entered as an employee who thought she was powerless. She left as the person who helped expose the truth. Because sometimes justice does not come from the loudest person. Sometimes it comes from the person who saved the document, the person who kept the message, the person who refused to delete the evidence. Karen fooled everyone who only looked at the surface, the charity logo, the emotional speeches, the staged photographs. But Judge Judy looked deeper. And underneath the image was the truth. A fake charity can collect money, it can collect praise, it can collect followers, but it cannot survive forever against records, witnesses, and people willing to ask one simple question. Where did it really go? If this story reminded you that kindness deserves honesty, like this video, subscribe for more courtroom stories where deception meets accountability. And share it with someone who believes trust should always be respected. Comment below. What was the biggest moment that exposed Karen's fake charity? Because Karen thought everyone saw a hero. But the evidence showed everyone the truth.